My sense is, as India becomes a major power and has big stakes in Asian security, it's imperative to work closely with the US, Japan, and Australia.
By the time this video goes out, the Quad meeting may well have started. The Prime Minister is already in Tokyo, and we're looking at, you looked at in your Rajamandla in your column this week, at this is a real opportunity for India. The Quad, India has been, you use the phrase somewhat, not hesitant, has been slow moving with deepening the partnership with the Quad as a group and the countries within it, including the US. So what is it now? Of course, you say that technology and defense technology is where Quad partners, particularly the US, can be of great help to India, and India can be a local partner in Asia to as a counterweight to China. What is it possible for India? Just as there's been questions raised, which you say, which is what Biden's trip is about. That can Russia, US has to be somewhat on two fronts. They're engaged with a quasi conflict with Russia and Europe, plus China and Asia. Do you think India can manage to stay neutral as it has tried to be? It's said territorial integrity and things like that about Ukraine, while making a different case for China and Asia, saying that this aggression is not okay, but that aggression is.
That's a good question. But I think, as you said, neutral is what we say, but I don't think we are neutral. I think the adaptation is being made and the emphasis on sovereignty and territorial integrity. But this is not a problem of being consistent. Because Russia is your friend, you don't want to criticize them and you have a deep relationship. But you directly face a threat to your territorial integrity from China. So it is what Russia did in Ukraine, of course, is a much larger version of what China has done in Ladakh, what it has done in the South China Sea and the other islands. So the principle is the same. Hypocrisy is part of international life. But in terms of the contradiction in India's position, I think the West seems to have made peace with India's position. And the focus of Biden's visit, while Ukraine provides the context for strengthening alliances, for shoring up of defenses, India has got some slack on the Russia question. And for them, the question is how far and how fast India can be integrated, India can be brought together in a broader Indo-Pacific and Asian agenda. So while Ukraine problem is there, the China problem has not gone away. So what we're seeing is India remains a critical player in Asia. So I think that the Biden administration has not made too much of an issue of India's position on Ukraine. And they're in fact willing to help India deal with its defense relationship. But the more important thing is there is an agenda in the Indo-Pacific on the IPEF, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, which India has agreed to join the discussions. And Prime Minister Modi was there today, that is Monday, before the Quad summit. So I think we have a whole lot of other things to accomplish in this part of the world.
One of the things that's come out post-Ukraine, the Ukraine crisis and India's position has been that there is a sense that, this is just a sense from what people are writing, including people who've been part of India's foreign policy establishment, that the suspicion of the West as an idea of this sort of being recolonized in some, not in a pre-Second World War kind of way, but that you will end up beholden to the West in some form, that there is a sort of suspicion of the West as an idea and as a partner. Do you see that affecting the way we're approaching the Quad as well as the US now in some small way? There's a sort of...
No, I think you're right. The suspicion is there, and that's the reason why we go slow. But I think that whole framework of East-West or North-South is changing. For example, on the question of territorial integrity and sovereignty, it is the US and Europe that are standing for the territorial integrity of states, whether it's in Europe or in Asia. It is China and Russia, which in the past were allies of the developing world against the West, are the ones seeking territory of their own neighbors. So in a sense, the imperial tag today attaches more tightly to China and Russia, unfortunately, than to the United States and the West. And this is the big change that has taken place. And meanwhile, India's engagement with the US, the cooperation has significantly expanded. For example, today, India's trade is largely with the Western countries, with the US, with Europe, and with Britain and the other Western countries. So in terms of the last 30 years, the post-liberalization era has seen a dramatic expansion of trade with the US. There's a dramatic expansion of security cooperation. There is an expansion of the regional political cooperation, which is what the Indo-Pacific framework is. So I think we've come a long way. But my sense is, as India becomes a major power and has big stakes in Asian security, it's imperative to work closely with the US, Japan, and Australia. After all, Japan is not a Western power; it's an Asian power, and the Australia is located in Asia. So I think the old divide between East versus the West or West versus Asia, those contradictions are being morphed with the assertiveness of China in Asia. And I think that's a big change. Till China, until recently, was saying, look, we're all buddies against the West. But they're the ones who are sitting on India's territory right, at this point and want more of it rather than the United States. So I think that profoundly alters the framework in which India deals with the West and China.
In this Quad meeting, it's obviously significant. It's happening amid a good global crisis. Apart from, there's going to be some bonhomie, there'll be pictures, but what is it, say, what would be a good outcome in terms of a concrete outcome for Prime Minister Modi to come back with and say, look, this is what happened at this meeting?
No, the key is the last in-person summit in Washington in September 2021, they were outlined an ambitious cooperation agenda on a range of technologies: vaccine production, health security, biotechnology, digital issues, cyber security, 5G, artificial intelligence. So you have actually and outer space. These are a large number of areas where they said, look, there are working groups now, which the 4 countries and their teams work together to produce outcomes which are not only beneficial for them, but also for the region. So I think the challenge is how much of it has been implemented. Tomorrow, when they review that is on Tuesday, they review the situation and we'll see how much. And we'll also see if there is some more ambition in terms of concrete outcomes. For example, there's been a report that, which is in the Indian Express front page today, that India and the Quad countries will work together to produce a information sharing arrangement that tracks illegal and unregulated fishing in the vast regions of Indo-Pacific. Of course, it is China that does most of it. It sends its fishing fleets into other countries, exclusive economic zones, and simply sweeps up the fish that it wants. So I think here is a concrete case of collaboration, a simple case, not a dramatic case. This is not about balance of power, but this is something that will help the island countries. This is something that will help these smaller developing coastal countries who don't have the capacity to monitor their own large exclusive economic zone. So there's only one simple, tomorrow we'll have a better sense of what all other things they've agreed. But the critical thing is this, I think, which is what we are arguing in the article, which is technology is changing the way we do security, changing the way economies are organized in terms of there's a greater digital component. The revolution in artificial intelligence, telecommunications is going to produce even greater transformation. So the nature of the economy is going to change fundamentally. So therefore, the question is, are we ready to adapt to this new framework? That is how you secure yourself and how you trade with other countries. That these are big changes are produced by technological revolution that is unfolding. So in the past, we know that whenever there is a breakthrough in the instruments of production, that is technology, the nature of the systems, the relations of production also need to be organized. So I think we're in the middle of a transformation of global security as well as global trading order. And technology is at the source of that. India is a reasonable power when it comes to technology, but I think it's well behind China, well behind some of its Quad members. partners. Therefore, I think the big question for India is, can it take advantage of the Quad to be able to accelerate its own internal transformation? That is, create the right political and regulatory conditions for faster development of technology. Can it work together in partnership with the Quad countries to be able to adapt to a new economy that is emerging here? Clearly, on semiconductors, for example, we have only Taiwan, South Korea, China, and the US are the ones that produce chips. India wants to produce semiconductor chips. So how do we get there? By using the partnerships in the Quad. So external partnerships coupled with nation building efforts internally. This is the opportunity. I think the question is how effective, how soon, how bold we are to get there.
Everyone should read the full piece. Of course, it's on the indianexpress.com and hopefully in the description wherever you're watching this video. So just to follow up on that as a final question, like in your piece, you mentioned how Biden visits the Samsung plant. It's a major on his Asia tour. Where in this node should India be? Because so much was made of this, something getting rejected, no one bidding for some Indian defense contract for a Make in India thing. Do you think, like you're saying, what is it that, where can we place ourselves in the supply chain, which is not just about submarines and tanks? I mean, that this sort of being at the cutting edge of technology. What does it take for us? What is the first step? Is it having a semiconductor plant, let's say a Japanese plant or a South Korean plant or an American plant operating out of India, or at least manufacturing India to some extent, not immediately, of course, but in the medium term?
Look, you see, for example, the Quad already has a working group on semiconductors.
Yeah.
There is an understanding that we should build a resilient supply chain within the Quad countries in relation to semiconductors. India has announced a major policy to produce semiconductors chips in India, not the kind of very specialized ones or very sophisticated ones Samsung is producing, but at least start with a lower end of chips. There is a policy announcement, and there are negotiations going on, including with the Samsung, with the Taiwanese companies, and with the US companies. So I think making a success, that is producing the right environment to have, so that's on our hands. That we have to create the conditions for outsiders to come and invest in India and begin the capabilities in India. India is already good at a design of semiconductors. We don't produce it because of our IT capabilities. Indian has the skilled manpower to design chips. Now the question is, when we get to manufacturing, we've been a weak element there. So now how do we work with the Quad to build that capability? It is optimistic, and semiconductors capture the theme. I mean, one is the defense side. Other is the civilian economy side. That you've seen the COVID crisis and the China lockdowns has produced such a shortage of chips that anyone of yours trying to get an iPhone or anything today, everything schedules are delayed. The chips are not being made from everything from cars to phones to every single modern gadget has chips, and therefore it's long overdue that India produce them. But I think the partnership with the Quad offers an opportunity to do that.
Great, so thanks everyone. Read the piece on the indianexpress.com and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.